realize that's the same graphic as we used last week. I wasn't getting lazy, it just seemed still appropriate, so I thought we would use them. We're going to be spending some time in 1 Thessalonians, and that's kind of where I thought we should start with this message. 1 Thessalonians 5:18 says, "Give thanks in all circumstances, for this is God's will for you in Christ Jesus." I can think of times when we've traveled. We've been pretty lucky this way, but I'm sure that you guys can share stories. You can share stories of traveling to go somewhere, maybe Thanksgiving or Christmas, and car breaks down, you get a flat tire. Something happens one way or another. And it's easy to get frustrated. It's easy to get angry with this. That things are going to be late. Maybe you got some nice clothes on. You're going to get dirty changing a tire. But you know, there's always something to be thankful for. And I think that that's important to kind of see the bright spots of that. So that's one of the things we'll talk about a little bit today. There was a snowstorm, really bad snowstorm one day, and this lady named Susan was outside shoveling her driveway. And she stopped to wave hello to her neighbor. And the neighbor, a guy, came over and said, why isn't your husband out here scooping this driveway for her? And she said, well, they had drawn to see who would go out to scoop and who would have to stay inside with the kids. And she said they drew straws, and the guy said, sorry that you had bad luck. And she replied, don't be sorry, I won. So you should give thanks in all circumstances. Dr. Dale Robbins says this: I used to think that people complained because they had a lot of problems. But I have come to realize they have problems because they complain. We all know that complaining doesn't change our circumstances. Doesn't make the situation any better. In fact, I think we could probably most always agree that complaining only amplifies our frustration. It spreads discontent not only from us to somebody else. And it can involve an invitation for the enemy to cause havoc in our lives. Complaining makes us miserable. Psalm 77:3 says, I complained and my spirit was overwhelmed. Philippians 2:13 says, do everything without complaining or arguing, so that you may become blameless and pure, children of God without fault in a crooked and depraved generation, in which you shine like stars in the universe. A positive, thankful person is a great witness in the dark world. I think it's kind of funny. I had the other day, the newsroom at KRVN can sometimes be a tough place. I mean, we that's where we let things out sometimes. And my friend Jason Jorgensen is very good at making impersonations of people. It's so funny. And he's really good at it. But I noticed he wasn't making any of me. Now, I don't know if that was because I was in the room, but he seemed to be able to do it for everybody when they were in the room. And he said, I don't do Scott. And I was just sort of listening to this. He said, well, he didn't complain enough about anything for me to do any impressions of him. So I thought, okay, well, that's a good thing, I guess. Of course, now I'm complaining about him, so I guess that doesn't work. Instead of looking at negatives in our lives and complaining, we must look at our positives and give thanks. And this is a good season to work on that. Back in Thessalonians, give thanks in all circumstances, for this is God's will for you in Jesus Christ. So here we're going to look at three things today. One is a reminder that we have it so good. We really have it so good. We enjoy it so much, and we express it so little. So that's kind of our thoughts for Thanksgiving, for all of us to think about. 1 Timothy 6:17 says, command those who are rich in this present world not to be arrogant, nor to put their hope in wealth, which is so uncertain, but to put their hope in God, who richly provides us with everything for our enjoyment. You remember, there was a movie some of you may remember that it was called White Men Can't Jump. Mitch knows this word for word, I'm sure. But there was one point where they were doing mama jokes. And one person said, your mama's so, or the other day I saw your mom was so poor, the other day I saw her kicking a can. And I asked what she was doing, and she said, moving. Your mama's so poor, she goes to Kentucky Fried Chicken to lick other people's fingers. You know, I used to think about some people's circumstances and where we came from. I remember asking my dad, who was born in 1925, I remember asking him what it was like during the Depression. And he would say, we were always depressed, so it didn't matter to us. People that grew up at that time had so many problems, so many things to think about. Again, 1 Timothy says, command those who are rich in this present world not to be arrogant. You know, and I know that we think about that a lot, but we do have so many things. All of us are familiar with a flea market. I was first really introduced to a big flea market when I went out to San Diego. They were called swap meets out there. And we went to the swap meet at the San Diego Civic Center. This thing was unbelievably huge. I mean, you could literally spend days there and not see everything. It was a lot of junk. It was a lot of junk. But people were going crazy for it. Now, some of you will stalk the auctions around here and find those same things. We are the rich of the world. We shouldn't be arrogant about it. But how often do we count our blessings? We have it so good to live here in America. There's a guy by the name of Ruben Cañas. He was a Hispanic preacher in East LA. Spoke at an American Baptist church. He was a preacher there. He had actually immigrated from Mexico. And he was talking about when he kind of first started. He actually was talking about when he was in Mexico, he worked for $1 a day. $1 a day. This isn't 150 years ago either. So he came to this country, and he was working and finally finding some work, and he finally kind of got the call from the Lord to go into ministry. And the Lord opened some doors for him, and he was able to go. He was able to get to college, to get to the seminary. And he was actually a minister in the Barrio, really rough parts, Hispanic parts of East LA, where there were gang activities and drive-by shootings and criminal activity all over the place. It was rampant. It was common. He said he preached on the streets and everywhere that he could. And he said during those years, he received a very small salary from the church. He said he used to get about $800 a month. And that's not very much in LA. He had financial troubles. He drove around a 1971 Ford Pinto. Those of you who remember the Ford Pinto know that that wasn't such a great thing. But he remembered that when he grew up, he had to ride a donkey. Reverend Cañas said he doesn't enjoy a lot of material things. It hasn't for many years, but he kept faithfully working in the Lord. He said eventually his church grew, and eventually it doubled in size, and so did his salaries, and he's been blessed. He said, God has been very good to me. I'm not rich according to a lot of people's standards. He makes about $36,000, and again in LA, that's not very much. But according to the standards of where I grew up, I am certainly very rich. And I'm so grateful that God has given me the chance to do what I do. So that's our first point, is that we are so blessed. My second point is that we enjoy it so much. 1 Timothy 6:17 says, "Command those who are rich in this present world not to be arrogant," remember, but to not put their faith in wealth. You know, it's funny, Americans are sort of a crazy lot sometimes we remember why other places don't like us very much. We'll do almost anything to have fun. And then we complain when it's time to get out of bed to go to work or to go to church. I thought this was a really good statement. We worship our work, work at our play, and play at our worship. Let me say that again. We worship our work, work at our play, and play at our worship. 2 Timothy says, mark this, there will be tough times to come. He later says, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God, having a form of godliness but denying its power, have nothing to do with them. God richly provided us with everything for our enjoyment. We often enjoy it too much. Whether it's childhood obesity or too much time in front of a TV or too much time in front of your phone. It's all right to enjoy the blessings of God. But it's important to remember the giver of those gifts. James 1:17 says, every good and perfect gift is from above. If it is good, it's from God, but let's not forget God. We have it so good. We enjoy it so much, sometimes too much. Sometimes we go whole hog on things. Maybe we eat just a little bit too much as we come to Thanksgiving. Sorry about that. You know, it's funny when you think about it. We may be the only place in the world that has all-you-can-eat buffets, where we go there and gorge ourselves. Trips that were meant to be enjoyed tend to overwhelm us because we try to cram so much stuff in there. We always want a little bit more. The lust for more material things and more pleasure dominates and controls our lives at times. At the point where God is sort of put on the sidelines or pushed away. 1 Timothy says, for the love of money is the root of all evil. Some people, eager for money and pleasure, have wandered from the faith and pierced themselves with many griefs. Our faith is diluted and drained, sometimes and damned. Now, not trying to be a Debbie Downer here. We are very blessed, and it's just important for us to remember that we have to express that, we have to show our love. And that gets us to our last point today. We express it so little. It was a famous cartoon by Charlie Brown, and it was Snoopy's dinner at Thanksgiving. And he had his usual dog food bowl, as you remember, on his doghouse. Remember, somehow it stayed up there. I'm not exactly sure how. Snoopy took one look at the dog food and said, "This isn't fair. So the rest of the world is eating turkey with all the trimmings, and all I get is dog food. Because I'm a dog," he said, "all I get is dog food." He stood there and stared at his dog food for a moment, and then says, "I guess it could be worse. I could be the turkey." Whenever we think that life is unfair, we need to think again. We could have been born or raised in a third world country where people have little or nothing. In Los Angeles, a parking citation with a $5 bill attached arrived at the Traffic Fine Bureau. An accompanying note said, "I found this ticket on the sidewalk. Not knowing if the car owner had ever seen it, I would like to make the remittance for him in gratitude for the occasions when I have parked over the allotted time and not received a ticket." That's pretty grateful. Give thanks in all circumstances, for this God will is for you in Christ Jesus. There's actually a guy in Miami who was a chairman of the board of, he was the owner of what was called Commute Air International Airways. This was back in the 80s. This guy had actually, he actually lists when you look at the airline that the chairman of the board is God. So when you look at the public offering, it says chairman of board, which usually says somebody's name, says God. The interesting story is that the owner of this airline had survived a horrific airline crash that some of you may remember in the Everglades back in the 70s, that many, many people died. He said, God's name is listed as the board chairman because who else could have put me in a business of having anything to do with airlines? Several years ago, some German immigrants to America told the story of a woman living in a farm in Germany who brought to her minister an amount of German money equivalent to about $10. As she laid down the money, she said, "In former years, I've had to pay about this amount in medicine. This year, there have been no sicknesses in my family. I want to show my gratitude to the Lord in this way." Sometime later, this same woman again came to her minister with about $5, explaining that many of her neighbors had suffered some losses in a recent windstorm, but that her farm had been spared. "I bring the church this donation as an offering of thanks." That's gratitude. So, I guess what I wanted to do is to give you some ideas of some things maybe to be thankful for that you hadn't really thought of. First, I'm thankful for taxes. I pay them because I'm employed. I'm thankful for clothes that fit a little too snug, because that means I have enough to eat. I'm thankful for my shadow, who watches me work, because it means I am out in the sunshine. I'm thankful for a lawn that needs mowing, windows that need cleaning, and gutters that need fixing, because it means I have a home. I'm thankful for that spot that I had to park a long ways away in the parking lot, because it means I'm capable of walking. I'm thankful for my high heating bill, because it means I am warm. Here's an appropriate one. I'm thankful for all the complaining I hear about our government, because it means that we have freedom of speech. I'm thankful for the lady behind me in church that sings off key, because it means I can hear. I'm thankful for the alarm that goes off early in the morning hours, because it means I am alive. And I'm thankful for the weariness of aching muscles at the end of a day, because it means I have been productive. Now, if any of you are cynical out there saying, "Yeah, but," shame on you. We are cynical, aren't we? We are cynical about things that we should be thankful for. But I think that it's difficult. I think cynicism rules us. I think cynicism and complaining are probably two of the bigger sins that God is upset about us sometimes. And certainly things that we do. It's a young man who was feeling very proud of himself. He was a brand new college graduate, and he had just taken the CPA exams and passed with flying colors. His father, who had been an immigrant to the U.S. before a wall went up, and now owned his own little business, filled with self-importance, the young man began to criticize his father's way of keeping books. He said, "Dad, you don't even know how much profits you've made. Over here in this drawer is your accounts receivable. Over here is your receipts. And you keep all your money in the cash register. You don't have any idea how much money you've made." The father answered, "Son, when I came to this country, the only thing I owned was a pair of pants. Now your brother is a doctor, your sister is an art teacher, and you are a CPA. Your mother and I own our home, we have a car, and we own this little business. Now add that up, subtract the pants, and all the rest is profits." Add it up. Add it up. That's exactly what we need to do at Thanksgiving, is add it all up.